Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Candidates Forum for the Virginia House of Delegates, District 43, covering Fairfax County, beginning at Rose Hill all the way down to the Lorton area. Excuse me. My name is Gina Wood, and I'm a member of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated, and we are one of several partners joining the League of Women Voters of Fairfax County to host the forum this evening. I'm honored to serve as your moderator and would like to give a warm welcome to our candidates, Mr. Mark Sickles and Mr. Brenton Hammond. Welcome, gentlemen. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, we appreciate you taking time from your campaigns to join us this evening to discuss various issues of concern and answer questions that have been submitted by members and other attendees. Last year was an aberration, and we had hoped the forum would be in person this year. However, out of an abundance of caution, we decided to conduct the candidates forum virtually again this year. We are pleased to have partners supporting the forum representing community-based organizations and service-oriented groups in Fairfax County representing District 43. All are nonpartisan and, like the League of Women Voters, are committed to supporting the democratic process by engaging all candidates in the forum. Of course, the primary goal is to encourage community participation. We are especially grateful to our many volunteers who have worked tirelessly to put together this virtual forum. Also, a huge thanks to our audience joining us tonight. I'm sure you all could be doing a lot of things this evening, and we truly appreciate you choosing to be with us. Democracy only works when we all participate. It is often said that democracy is not a spectator sport, and we all must engage to make it work. It is important for us to get to know all the candidates, better understand their values and their position on the issues that are important to us. We look forward to an engaging conversation and respectful discussion of the issues. Tonight's format will be moderated as follows. All candidates certified to appear on the November 2nd ballot were invited to participate. Tonight's candidates will have 90 seconds for an opening statement. I will then invite each candidate to respond to a series of questions with only 90 seconds to respond. Both candidates will have an opportunity to answer the same questions. At the end of the question and answer period, each candidate will have 2 minutes to provide a closing statement. I will pose the questions to the candidates in the order in which their names appear on the ballot. After the question, I will alternate the next question to the second candidate first, and continue alternating questions with each candidate. Remember, candidates, you will be limited to 90 seconds to answer the question. Our timekeeper, Ava, will indicate when the candidate has 30 seconds and 15 seconds remaining. You will be given a stop alert. We will be strict on the timing to ensure we can address as many questions as possible. The candidates and their campaigns may not record any part of the forum and are not permitted to use any pictures or videos found on the League of Women Voters website, implying an endorsement. After the forum, candidates will be sent a list of the questions that were submitted. However, due to paucity, some of the questions may not have been asked due to time constraints. Candidates may post answers to some or all of the questions on their websites. Mr. Sickles and Mr. Hammond, do either of you have any questions?
No, ma'am. Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're good. Okay, thank you. With that overview of the format, let's get started. Mr. Sickles, I welcome you to kick us off with a 90-second opening statement.
Well, good evening, League, and especially those members who live in Greater Franconia, Kingstown, Newington, and Lorton. I was sworn in for this job, and it's been an exciting I'm in my 18th year now, 16 years in a minority. It was great to work with Republicans when they were in charge. Speaker Howe appointed me to the Appropriations Committee in 2014. And then when we gained more seats, Speaker Cox appointed me to the Budget Conference, which is the most important thing you can do in the General Assembly, to wrangle with those senators on what the final budget looks like. So I'm pretty busy in committee work with appropriations as vice chair and chair of the Health and Human Resources Appropriations Subcommittee. My committee, Health, Welfare, and Institutions, rules, and important to the League, privileges and elections. When I first was on P&E back at the beginning, Lacey Putney was the chair. He was the longest serving legislator in the United States, 52 years. He said it was the most important committee in the General Assembly, and I'm sure the league agrees with that. We, after many years as ranking member on P&E, we passed bills that made voting more accessible. We passed early voting early in person and absentee by mail or drop box. I had a bill that passed a couple years ago with your support that had the postmark that if it's on there on election day, you can have your vote counted until Friday at noon.
Thank you.
The other ballots are due.
Thank you
have
so
to
much.
go and prove your address. Thank you. I see
Thank you,
I'm
Mr.
out.
Sickles. Thank you. Next up, we would like to ask Mr. Hammond to make his 90-second opening statement. Mr. Hammond, over to you.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you, League of Women Voters, for putting this forum on, and to all those that are helping. Thank you, Delegate Sickles, for being here and working with me on this date. I appreciate that. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge two important things. We're in the important month of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So I know there's a lot of folks out there who have been impacted by that. And I'm praying for you, and we're praying certainly for a cure. And then Domestic Violence Awareness Month, also a very important, important issue that so many people are facing. And we hope that there's so many tools and resources out there for help to be made and for us to recognize the signs of that. My name is Brenton Hammond. For those of you who don't know me, I'm running to be your House of Delegates candidate in District 43 because for too long, you felt like your voice isn't heard. You felt like you've not been represented. You felt like Richmond doesn't listen to you, and Richmond wants to tell you how to live your life instead of Richmond realizing they work for you. So I'm the candidate that's here to represent you. I believe in servant leadership. I'm the candidate that will tell you I believe in academic excellence in schools and school choice. I'm the candidate that believes that we should fully fund and support our law enforcement. And I'm the candidate that believes I work for you and not the other way around. So I look forward to a great discussion tonight. I look forward to convincing you and hopefully you considering me for a vote for this upcoming election to be your next representative in District 43. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. So let's jump right into our questions, and we're going to be covering a whole host of issues. So I'd like to start us off in the issue areas of voting rights. So the first question is for you, Mr. Sickles. What concerns, if any, do you have on the changes in Virginia election laws from last year? And these are things like no excuse, drop boxes, ballots being accepted until Friday after the election, and there's several other issues. And you'll have 90 seconds.
I feel great about it. Yes, ma'am. Great about it. I was involved in doing all those things. It went smoothly this year. We're going to have same-day registration by next year. I helped fund the new Veris under procurement now to replace our antiquated technology that governs how people get registered every day. It's used every day by our registrars across the Commonwealth. I ordered up a ballot last year and dropped it in a drop box, and it was so convenient. I had a great experience. We had people waiting in lines in Franconia to vote, and I just walked by folks and put it in the drop box. So we want to make it easy for everybody to vote and convenient, and we're off on the right track.
Same question to you, Mr. Hammond. What concerns, if any, do you have on the changes in Virginia election laws from last year? Again, no excuse, drop boxes, and then ballots being accepted until Friday after the election.
Sure. I think I'm for it being easy to vote and, of course, harder to cheat. And I think that's a part of democracy, and we should want as many people engaged in the civic process as possible. I think when it comes to the topic of voter ID, though, there's a difference between me and my opponent. Voter ID, I do not see as anything that's oppressive. I think we go to the post office, we use a photo ID. We go through an airport, we use a photo ID. So I don't see where there was a need to change the voter ID, and also the witness signature. I would like to have seen that remain in place for the absentee ballot. As far as the early voting days, what I'm hearing from a lot of people is it's hard to staff the voting locations for 45 days. I am for early voting. Let me be very clear. I early voted last year. and I early voted this year. So I'm for early voting. I don't know if the 45 days is where a lot of people stand, but I'm for people in the process to vote as possible. I'm for engaging as many people as possible. But I think there are some things we should just evaluate, and especially after this election cycle, just to make sure we got it right in Virginia and there are not any areas of improvement.
So following on to that, Mr. Hammond, what will you do to increase voter participation and access to voting?
Sure. Well, I think it starts by, number one, engaging our young people. I would love to see more engagement in that high school senior area, especially to let them know how much and how important it is for them to vote in state elections and local elections. You know, oftentimes we celebrate and we get excited to the presidential vote. And yes, that's important as well. But I would like to see more engagement in our young people. So if that's through social media, if that's through local clubs that target young people, bringing them into the voting process and letting them know how important and critical this is and that their vote matters in this process as well. Of course, looking for ways in the minority community that we make sure people have a way to get to the voting locations to vote as well. That's often sometimes a struggle. And then in Virginia, we have elections every year. So how do we in Virginia make sure we don't address what I call Virginia fatigue and make sure people realize that every year we have an election and every election is critical and important. So I kind of think it's a full prong approach. I'd want to reach out to our young people and get some programs to bring them into the voting process. Of course, reach out to our minorities. And I think a great way to bring in minority voters is using our churches and asking our churches to help us as well. And then, of course, making sure that everybody knows that in Virginia, there's an election every year, and it's critical that you come out and support. Local, state, and federal elections are equally important.
Mr. Sickles, same question to you. What will you do to increase voter participation and access to voting?
Well, I think some of the things Mr. Hammond mentioned are really good things. That's why I go to Hayfield High School. Most seniors register to vote as they leave when they can. Same thing with Edison. Very much encourage voters, young people to get engaged and know who their delegate is, their state senators, their supervisors, how government works. A lot of times, even with the AP classes, they don't understand who does what. And so I spend a lot of time working on those things. I think that having Sunday voting for the first time is going to be helpful. We just enacted that. So I have no problem with and encourage any organization, including churches, to organize and come vote. It's a great American way, and the more people that vote, the better off we are as a society. And, it's just a great thing that we should all agree to.
Thank you.
And by the way, on the pictures on the ballot, you have to sign a sworn affidavit to vote without an ID unless you have utility bills or something like that. So we did not eliminate ID requirements. We just eliminated the photo ID because some people don't have that, especially elderly people who don't drive anymore.
Okay, thank you. So I want to shift our discussion now to human rights. Effective July 1st of 2020, the Virginia Values Act expands the scope of the Virginia Human Rights Act to prohibit discrimination in employment and housing on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. The new law also fundamentally changes the legal rights and remedies available to employees who sue their employers under the Human Rights Act. Do you support the Virginia Values Act with the recent case brought on by Calvary Road Baptist Church suing the government over the Virginia Values Act? And that question's for you, Mr. Sickles.
Well, I don't know what the basis of their claim is. I believe in their First Amendment rights, their right to association. I don't think there's anything in the Virginia Values Act that violates the Constitution. I don't know what their standing is to sue. I have not seen or read their briefing. So in general, I think that the Supreme Court has said there's a ministerial exception with teaching something. If you're teaching the faith, you are exempt from anything in the Virginia Values Act, if you're working in the lunchroom or you are a landscaper, you're mowing the grass, that's what the bill's intended to protect. People like that from being fired from their job in the employment side. Of course, it covers public accommodations and housing as well. And we added this year people with disabilities. So we updated our existing disabilities law to conform or be part of the Virginia Values Act. So I'm a strong, very strong supporter of the legislation. I carried it in the House, and I'm glad that Virginia was the 21st state in the union to have a law like this.
Same question to you, Mr. Hammond. Do you support the Virginia Values Act with a recent case brought on by Calvary Road Baptist Church suing the government over the Virginia Values Act?
Sure. So given that this is Calvary Road Baptist is literally right here in District 43, I would hope maybe after this forum, Delegate Sickles would maybe make some time to go speak with the congregation or the pastor, because this is a serious issue to them. Let me be very clear. This is a loving church. This is not a church that is trying to create division or to create any type of divide among people. But what this act has done for them is it's forced them to be in a position where they have to hire people that necessarily do not go along with their values as a religious institution. And as someone who served 2 terms as a deacon in my church, I can understand where this would create an issue for Calvary Road Baptist, and they have every right to have concerns about this law. And if Delegate Sickles, who says he led on this law in the House, I hope he could go back and review to see if there is a religious exemption or some type of exemption, because Calvary Road Baptist would be, I believe, deserving of that exemption. Again, this is not to create a pathway to hate, but the church shouldn't have to hire people that go against their values. The church shouldn't be told they have to make certain accommodations that go against their religious and biblical values. We should stand up for religious liberties. And that means for those that believe in and don't believe and do believe. And right now, Calvary Road Baptist does not feel, from my understanding, that the Virginia's Values Act, is a bill that includes them. And here, that's a church right here in our district.
Mr. Hammond, second question on human rights. Do you support the policies produced by the Virginia Department of Education to ensure transgender students are treated with dignity and respect in all schools?
I support any policy that says someone should be treated with dignity and respect, because that's an American fundamental. That's also, for me, that's a biblical right. That's leading as a Christian. Where we're going, I think, with this question is, in the case of over in Loudoun County with Mr. Cross, do we support, in the case of Mr. Cross, a teacher going against his religious beliefs and calling a student something he cannot, through religious means, say? And I support Mr. Cross in that situation. He should not be forced to call a student by a name that he does not, or a title, or acknowledge a gender that he did not feel comfortable with. With that being said, I would never, ever accept anybody of the LGBT community being disrespected, being demonized, being cast out, having hateful rhetoric or speech towards them. And no Christian that I know would accept that either. But as it relates to some of the rules that have come down through our school boards in Fairfax County, and then obviously following the guidance of the Virginia Department of Education, I think we're starting to tread here on people's religious liberties and freedoms. Again, there's respect of the person always and the safety of them always, but it doesn't mean you get to infringe on someone's religious liberties as a result. So I think sometimes these rules have unintended consequences.
Mr. Sickles, same question to you. Do you support the policies produced by the Virginia Department of Education to ensure transgender students are treated with dignity and respect in all schools?
Absolutely. I mean, I think our Constitution is there to protect minorities. It's not to protect the mass opinion. That's what makes us different from a country in the world, at least the autocracies that seem to be growing up around the world. This is sometimes there's a clash of constitutional rights, and we need to find balance on these things. In terms of the Virginia Values Act, I mean, what is the reason that you would fire. You can't use religion as a hammer to discriminate in our country. I mean, that's why we're different. So I do think that we should respect the gender identity of young people as they grow up. That is a difficult process that should be kept in their family with their counselors, their doctors. This is something that we should respect people's individual views. And I think the Board of Education has done the right thing. And I think as this moves through time, we will prove that this was the right thing, the humane thing, humane policy to maintain.
Thank you. Let's shift over to redistricting, which is a big topic right now. Mr. Sickles, question to you. What's your position on redistricting and its effect on the 43rd district?
What's the question?
I'm sorry, Mr. Sickles. What's your position on redistricting and its effect on the 43rd district?
Yeah, the main thing, I'm not paying super close attention to it, but the main thing one of the maps did, which I did comment on, was cutting Franconia right down the middle. Ever since it's been a single member district since the early 80s, I think Franconia has been all together. I also think that the map drawers, I didn't say this, but the map drawers consider high school catchment areas when they're considering communities of interest. When you represent an area like I do, the high school pyramid from the elementary, middle, and high schools is the only one of the few sensitive communities that we have. And you can't keep that all together, but you should try as best you can. So as far as the way the district looks now, the way it was drawn now, prior to 2011, it was a more round shape because my good friend, Republican friend in the neighboring district didn't want, they had a majority and they drew it to the way they wanted to. They gave some precincts over to me and to Vivian Watts that they could not win. And so that's why I'm important right now. I've told the commission they should look at what was gerrymandered last time and fix those things. And I don't think it's in our interest to draw Vivian Watts out of a seat. She's the longest serving woman in the General Assembly history. And that's what one of the maps did, and putting the 43rd, what would be the 43rd over there. So
thank you, Mr. Sickles. Same question to you, Mr. Hammond. What's your position on redistricting and its effect on the 43rd district?
Sure. Just before I answer that, I want to come back and say I agree religion shouldn't be used as a hammer, but to the reverse of that, we don't want a hammer coming to those that are religious as well. As it relates to redistricting, we have a process in play that the people of the Commonwealth voted on. Right now, we see it hitting some snags. You know, the committees have a deadline in 5 days to present their maps, and I think if we were taking a gauge right now, it doesn't look like they're going to meet their deadline. And the fail-safe is the Virginia Supreme Court stepping in if they can't meet that, if they can't meet their deadline. What I would say for District 43, as long as I want to see a fair drawn map, I want to see as many as I want it to show the diversity of District 43, the increase in minority population that we have. This is a rich area. So my standpoint on the redistricting is, as long as it's above board and it's what the people have asked for, at this time, I don't have anything against the process.
Okay, let's move on to taxes and budgeting. And this question again for you, Mr. Hammond. Would you support raising new revenue through reforms like enacting a state capital gains tax or ending wasteful tax breaks to ensure adequate funding for things such as children's health, safety, and education? And also, do you have any other ideas for raising new revenue for the state?
Sure. So I think revenue is obviously an important question. I think for a lot of folks, they feel right now, you know, with the prices of inflation and the taxes from the grocery store tax, the increase in gas tax, and in Fairfax County, what will be implemented in 2022 with the plastic bag tax, people kind of feel like there's a heavy burden on them right now as we're trying to come out of the economic issues that were caused from the pandemic. So as far as raising revenue, I'm a Dave Ramsey person. I'm a budget person. I'm a person that you live within your means. And when I was deacon of my church, we had to make tough decisions over the money that we had. That was the people's money. Obviously, it was the money that people tithe and gave in offering. So it was the people's money. And the same as such as the state. So here's what I say. You lay out your priorities, you lay out the existing revenue, and you see where you can make ends meet. And what I found in my time in government, whether it was 8 years in the federal government, is that usually every single dollar is not going to the right place. And there are other areas where you could maybe cut back to send money to a needed area. Now, sometimes people will take the cutback as, oh my goodness, he's saying he wants to cut critical programs. No, but if anyone on this line tells me that every single dollar that a government is spending is 100% going to its best use, I think we should question that ideology. So I say we lay everything out on the table, see where our priorities are, and go from there, staying within the budget.
Same question to you, Mr. Sickles. Would you support raising new revenue through reforms like enacting a state capital gains tax or ending wasteful tax breaks to ensure adequate funding for things such as children's health, safety, and education? And then also, do you have any other ideas for raising revenue for the state?
Well, generally, we should be looking at every tax break that's out there to see if it's still producing its purpose. We did that with the coal tax credit and we eliminated it. It was taking a lot of money from the Treasury. We need to have comprehensive tax reform. And, we basically have a flat tax, as you all know. Once you make $17,000, you pay 5.75 of your adjusted gross income. It's been things that are the basic part of our economy. So reform, we still are based on an agricultural economy, which we're not in. Things that some statewide Republican candidates say that they want to do, they can't do it with our current tax code. It would be impossible to put the biggest investment in education under the current. We would have done it already. What we do need to do, and the most important thing in Virginia to do, is to upgrade the standards of quality in our schools. And we need to raise the level. Fairfax is already spending more than the state requires on the standards of quality. We need to do that. It would help the whole state. We can't do that on the current tax revenue that we are raising. The grocery tax is just a ridiculous issue. That's 2.5 cents. We would have eliminated in 2004, but 1 cent goes to the school division, 1 cent goes to the local government, and 0.5 cent goes to Transportation Trust Fund, which saved us through that entire period until 2013, when we had no new revenues for transportation. It's totally irresponsible.
So let's talk about campaign and political finance reform. And this question starts off with you, Mr. Sickles. Do you support real-time electronic disclosure of donations to any political campaign or organization?
Sure, absolutely. We can do that. We do have rules now at the end where big contributions have to be announced immediately. Sometimes I don't, the post office box, so I don't know I have a contribution, so I'd have to, you'd be on your honor to post it as soon as you knew you had it, but I have no problem with that.
Same question to you, Mr. Hammond. Do you support real-time electronic disclosure of donations to any political campaign or organizations?
So I'm for transparency when it comes to campaign donations, but what I'm not for is there's a lot of folks that feel uncomfortable with donating in fear of retaliation for their political views. As I go across District 43, I have a lot of people who say, Brenton, I'd love to make you a generous donation of $150, but because that's going to put me over the reporting requirement, I'm nervous to do that. I put up a sign last year in my yard, let's say of Donald Trump, and it got egged. And I'm fearful that people are going to look me up and know that I gave to you. So I'm for transparency, but not transparency when it makes people feel uncomfortable, makes people fear of harassment. So what I always will be for is I think as a candidate, we owe the people transparency. And if that means enacting more legislations to be transparent, what should be included in that legislation is something that says it protects those that give to political candidates, so that way they're not in fear of harassment of any kind or anything worse. So I'm for transparency, but I'm also for protecting the comfort level of those giving donations.
So just adding on to that, Mr. Hammond, would you support efforts to reform the campaign finance system and help bring the public further into the political process?
I would have no problems with bringing the public further into the political process. Again, we work for the people, we work for the public, and they should have a front row seat or at least easy access to obtain those things. What I love right now through organizations like VPAP and other organizations, they can go on right now and see who the contributors are and who's giving money to whom and what corporations are giving money to whom. So I would be totally for bringing the people into the process. Yes, ma'am.
Same question to you, Mr. Sickles. Would you support efforts to reform the campaign finance system and help bring the public further into the political process?
Absolutely, we do. We do have a pretty aggressive $100 limit that you have to. I never heard of anyone being scared to give me money. That's a new one. But we're $100 less than the federal government. The federal government is $200. So as far as campaign finance reform, maybe a limit on how much you can spend in a campaign, but at all different levels. The problem with that, and we do have a study group looking at this now. The Supreme Court has said that we cannot limit what a candidate can spend on their own campaign. So if you had a candidate like the Republican nominee for governor right now, you can't limit what he spends out of his own pocket. So put other people at a disadvantage on not being able to raise the funds to compete. That's as long as we have that Supreme Court ruling, it's going to be difficult to change it. But it is ridiculous what these campaigns cost. Ironically, in Central Virginia and in Southeast Virginia, in Hampton Roads and Richmond, it costs more to run for office down there because broadcast television is so cheap. We wouldn't think of buying a broadcast television in our area, in the metropolitan Washington area. But it's really ridiculous how much these things cost. And I'm looking for ways. I'm hoping the committee can come up with something that's passable, that works, that won't put anyone at a disadvantage.
Thank you. Let's shift now to, I think, a topic that's on many minds of Virginians across the state, but particularly I think here in the District 43, and that's healthcare and health-related topics. So Mr. Sickles, first question to you. What, in your opinion, is the best way we can balance state public health, especially considering COVID-19, with the economic needs and the environmental risk in Virginia?
Well, right now we have to wipe out COVID-19. And so it looks like that we're at 76% vaccinated rate now. And a lot of that has come from employers requiring their employees to get vaccinated for those folks who don't want to get vaccinated. This vaccine is a miracle of science. Has gone into research that led to the quick construction of these mRNA vaccines, and it's something that should be celebrated. I can't wait until it's approved for children, so we can have a better situation in our schools, and parents that are reluctant to send their kids back to school will be less so. People say there was a kind of quote movement to send kids back to school before we had this thing as much under control as it is now. But half of Fairfax County's parents wanted to continue the remote learning. So I think to get our economy moving like it was before and get our hospitality industries back into, hospitality and tourism is a big industry in Virginia. And to get that back where it was, it's going to take people being vaccinated. And actually following other public health advice to stay socially distant and mask up where we need to.
Thank
I
you.
never understood why masking is such
So-
a thing for some
Thank
people.
you. Mr. Hammond, same question for you. What, in your opinion, is the best way we can balance state public health, especially considering the COVID-19, with the economic needs and environmental risk in Virginia?
Sure, sure. Before I get into that question, just one quick thing. I would encourage Delegate Sickles to get out and talk to some folks who maybe didn't vote for him, and they would share their concerns about the donation requirement. This is not me just making this up. This is something I've consistently heard from around the district. And to the single family who's trying to make ends meet here in District 43, the grocery store tax, that little bit of change, that adds up when you're trying to save pennies and make ends meet. When it comes to the health in the state, look, I, from day one, have taken the virus seriously. COVID-19 is something that has changed our lives as we know it. But the one area where I do disagree, and this is the distinction between myself and Delegate Sickles, the mandate on individuals who choose not to take it, adults, is not acceptable. So for nurses that we were saying just less than a year ago, just 6 months ago, they are our heroes, and they are our heroes. They are essential workers that put their lives on the line and fought hard for us. And let's say they are choosing, some of them, not to get the vaccine. Now we're saying you deserve to be fired. So a few months ago, you were a hero. Now you deserve to be fired. That's not acceptable. I am for distancing. I am for keeping the mitigation standards in place that allows everybody and businesses to stay open. But Richmond shouldn't be dictating to individuals in the state how they should be vaccinated. I'm for it. I have taken the vaccine, but that's an individual choice. And I encourage people to take it.
Okay. As a follow-up question, do you support additional funding to localities for COVID-19 testing?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun there. Yes, ma'am. I do support more testing. I think testing testing has been one of the biggest things we've seen in helping us to identify people who are infected and quickly, have them, take the needed precautions to not infect more people. So I'm for more testing. I think that's a critical piece in the fight against COVID-19, to include all of the other measures that we're doing right now.
Same question to you, Mr. Sickles. Do you support additional funding to localities for COVID-19 testing?
I have allocated hundreds of millions to localities in the job that I have now, both with the American Rescue Plan money and with our own general fund dollars. And I don't know what my opponent's going to do to pay for the schools the money he's going to take away by doing away with the 2.5 cents, especially in rural Virginia, where that's the only money they have other than their property tax, which doesn't raise much money. And I assure him, I've talked to thousands and thousands of people in the district over the years and have never once heard anybody afraid of being beat up for giving a campaign contribution. That is just silly.
Another question, health related. Mr. Sickles, to you, would you protect or repeal Medicaid expansion in Virginia?
Well, I worked closely with Chris Jones, the Republican chairman of the Appropriations Committee, to get that passed. It was a miracle in 2018. Someone's going to write a book about it sometime, how that happened. It was the best thing that's happened since I've been here, and it has ensured and provided healthcare, a way to pay the healthcare for many people. We're up to 550,000 now because of COVID, because of the COVID pandemic. We had this in place to help people who lost their jobs. So that last year we extended the dental benefit to adults for the first time. It was when the Affordable Care Act passed, nobody thought that the Medicaid part of it would be subject to being struck down. When it does. Most states, 38 states, have passed it now, and we took too long to do it, and it's been a great thing for the Commonwealth.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond, same question. Would you protect or repeal Medicaid expansion in Virginia?
Sure, I would. I think it's critical. It's a critical service that so many Virginians depend on, quite honestly, across the Commonwealth, low income, minorities. So yes, this would be something that I would 100% support, looking ways to fund it, of course, and keep it in place. And just to add on to Delegate Sickles, sir, it's very critical that we listen to constituents when they're speaking. And as your constituent, I never said anyone was beat up for making a donation. Never said beat up. I said harass. And what I tell you, sir, how about we make this after the election? Let's go around. That way, there's no election at stake. And I'll take you to some of these people that have shared these concerns, and we can commit to working on that and addressing that, no matter the outcome of the election. But nowhere did I say anybody was beat up or anything like that. I just want to make sure the record is clear for the voters.
Mr. Hammond, switching questions a little bit here. On abortion, in a 2020 Pew Research survey, 55% of Virginians support legal abortion in all or most cases, with 42% opposed. What is your position on abortion and ensuring women have the legal right to make their own healthcare decisions? And that's a question for you, Mr. Hammond.
So the topic of abortion is a moral issue for me. This is not political. This is not anything else. Proverbs chapter 6 says, God detests the shedding of innocent blood. And to me, I am not for the killing of babies. It's just plain and simple. What I am for is for giving through pregnancy resource centers people another alternative to abortion. I am for the huge waiting list of adoptions that exist around this country. And so many families that would love to adopt a baby, so many families that are taking IVF and going thousands upon thousands of dollars into debt because they cannot conceive, or horribly for the families that continue to miscarry. And they would give anything to have a baby and to love a baby. So what I'm for is bringing us back from where our current laws are right now. We have a legislature that tried to introduce birthday abortions. We have a legislature that repealed a 24-hour wait bill and an ultrasound bill. Let's bring Virginia back. I do not demonize anyone who's gotten an abortion. I'm not here to condemn you nor judge you, but there are so many people that would love that baby and take care of that baby. And the Virginia legislature has gone too far on their abortion position.
Mr. Sickles, same question to you. And I'll just restate the statistics. In 2020,
yes.
the Pew Research survey, 55% of Virginians support legal abortion in all or most cases, with 42% opposed. What is your position on abortion and ensuring women have the legal right to make their own healthcare decisions?
Well, I totally support adoption. I think adoption's a good thing, but I think Roe v. Wade was a very good decision that stood the test of time for these 50 years. I think ultimately people could have different moral views, but the moral views of the woman is what I care about. And right now, if the Supreme Court, which they, I think, will likely do when they hear the Missouri case, overturn Roe v. Wade after all these years, this decision will be in Richmond to make, and I'm going to make sure that every woman has the decision in her own hands of what she does. We're not going to make it for her if we're in the majority. We're going to let her decide what's best for her with her family doctor, her priest or rabbi or imam.
Follow-up question to you, Mr. Sickles. What are your thoughts about the recently passed law that essentially prohibited all abortions in Texas? And would you support a similar bill in Virginia?
Absolutely not. I mean, that law is unbelievable. The Supreme Court allowed this vigilante to law enforcement to take place. It's kind of a procedural decision. I think that's shows you what's coming next year in the Missouri case, and it's outrageous. And I feel sorry for the women of Texas now. They don't have these services, and this is a real medical issue for many women. It was a extraordinarily outrageous decision that they made, both Texas and the Supreme Court.
Same question to you, Mr. Hammond. What are your thoughts about the recently passed law that essentially prohibited all abortions in Texas? And would you support a similar bill in Virginia?
Well, when I look at the Texas law, I say, let Texas be Texas, and in Virginia, let's talk about what we have. And what we have right now is we have, through a neighboring delegate Kathy Tran, someone who offered abortion with no time limits on it. What we have right now in Virginia is a repeal of the 24-hour waiting period. The repeal, it's gone away, of the ultrasound. What we have right now is a current legislator controlled by the current party in power that would go even further to say birthday abortions are okay. When the majority of voters, even those who identify as pro-choice, say birthday abortions, late third trimester abortions, are things they do not support. So in Virginia, I'm concerned about protecting what we can do right here and right now. And the majority of Virginians side with me when it comes to, we don't want late third term abortions. There are other ways that we can, of course, there are other ways that we can make sure this baby is given to a family that will love it and take care of it. But what we don't want is more babies killed in Virginia as a result of a legislator who has no respect for life.
So let's shift to economics. Mr. Hammond, question for you. Virginia's minimum wage rose to $9.50 an hour in May of 2021, the first of 3 increases that will culminate at $12 an hour in 2023. According to a research done by MIT, the required living wage in Virginia for 2 adults and 1 child is $17.78 for each working adult. What steps, if any, will you take to bridge this gap?
Sure. It's by making sure we get our small businesses in particular back open, thriving. We don't have crushing tax burdens that will cause them to have to slow down the pay incentives that they would give their employees. And it's making sure all elements of the Virginia economy, from all sectors, from energy to health to services to leisure, all of them are fully open without the regulatory burdens of Richmond. And in turn, the employers will pay their workers what they deserve. So many small businesses right here in District 43 had to cut back staff, whether it be local barbershops, whether it be local restaurants during this last year, because of some of the policies enacted as a result of the pandemic. Instead of allowing the businesses to make the decisions on how they could safely be open and still safely serve the community, Richmond stepped in and created burdens on them. So let's make sure that in Virginia, we have a business climate that makes us #1. At one point, Virginia was ranked #5 in the nation for business. And now we've gone downhill. So let's put Virginia back on top. Let's make sure we're not passing laws that burden our small businesses and our business owners here in Virginia, especially District 43.
Same question for you, Mr. Sickles. Virginia's minimum wage rose to $9.50 an hour in May of 2021, the first of 3 increases that will culminate at $12 an hour in 2023. According to research done by MIT, the required living wage in Virginia for 2 adults and 1 child is $17.78 for each working adult. What steps, if any, would you take to bridge this gap?
Well, the current statute has us, after it gets to $12, take another vote on whether it goes to 15 or not. So we'll see where that is at the time. It sounds like my opponent is against the minimum wage. And I don't know where he was this year, but we were ranked #1 for business for the 2nd year in a row by CNBC. I mean, it was a big deal. We had a press releases a couple months ago, it is, we have a great state. We're doing well. I don't like it when politicians talk down our economy. There's most states in the country would trade places with us in a heartbeat if they could. So as far as these draconian things that the Northam administration supposedly did, he saved this economy. He did not hurt it. We in Northern Virginia don't have the burden of the people that are still dying. We never had an emergency in the hospitals up here because of our educated population and people wanting to get vaccinated and people following public health recommendations. So I think that we're doing great. We're going to do better. We had Amazon come here, out of 300 applications to get that company's second headquarters. We got it here. We have Nestle coming here. It is mind-boggling that people think that we don't have a good economy here. I look forward to continuing to growth.
Let's try one more question on the economic front, and this is one that's pretty significant. What legislation do you support in closing Virginia's gender pay gap, especially with women making 80 cents to every dollar earned by their male coworkers? So there's a pay equity question there.
Is that to me or Delegate Sickles?
Mr. Sickles.
Okay.
Well, we need to enforce the current law in the Lilly Ledbetter Act as well. We need to support women-owned businesses. We need to work on education and credentialing. Workforce is the biggest issue in economic development today. It's not taxes. It is, do you have the people that can do this work? Continue to work on with 2 different programs that we have to help companies custom train their workforce. And I think we need to focus on women and making sure they're taking advantage of these workforce issues. Also, it's very difficult for women to work with high childcare costs, and we have done our best so far with the resources we have to get quality childcare, and we're trying to get every at-risk child, 3 and 4-year-old in Virginia, pre-K education. When we do that, we not only help the child, but we help their mom be able to go out and work and have the career that she may want to have. So those are some things we can do, and I would be open to any suggestions that you have. I do feel it is an issue, but Virginia is probably better on this score than many other states, and I'm open to your ideas.
Thank you. Same question for you, Mr. Hammond. What legislation do you support in closing Virginia's gender pay gap, especially with women making 80 cents to every dollar earned by their male coworkers?
I support any legislation that brings that up to women making the same thing as men. As having a sister who just retired out of 30 years of active duty service in the Army, when she entered the Army, she started on the same pay scale as her male counterpart. And I know that's the federal level. And that's the way it should be in the private sector as well. My sister did the same job, and she performed to the same standard as her male counterparts all 30 years of her career. I have female family members that are in law enforcement that are doing the same job as their male counterparts, and they deserve to be compensated just as to the same rate as they are right now as their male counterparts. So as it relates to the private sector, we need to pass whatever legislation it is to eliminate the gap. There should be no gap between a woman and a man's pay. Our women are some of the smartest and best entrepreneurs and business owners and thought people. They just get things done, and we should be encouraging that. And no woman should have to face the fact that she might be making less than her male counterpart, and she's doing the same job, or in a lot of cases, a better job than her male counterpart. So I would work with any group that we could get some language written into law and passed immediately.
Thank you. Let's shift our discussion to policing. And the first question I want to go to you, Mr. Hammond. Do you condone, support, or condemn what happened at the Capitol building on January 6th? And please elaborate on your response.
Sure. On January 6th, any of those folks that broke the law by trespassing onto the Capitol grounds are treated as criminals. They're criminals. It's no other way to describe it. As someone who spent 8 years in law enforcement, working in Washington, D.C., being in the United States Secret Service, those images on January 6th disturbed me. They did. I know Capitol Police officers. I know Secret Service personnel that were at the Capitol on that day. So anytime you break the law, you're a criminal and you deserve to be treated as such. I wasn't down there and I wasn't a part of that day. But what I will say is the same way we look at January 6th is the same way we should look at the rioting of last year when we saw cities burning and crime being committed by individuals who, I'm not talking about the legitimate protests that we saw last year. That was legitimate. But the looting and burning down of our cities was a criminal act to me. So to me, a criminal act is a criminal act. It doesn't matter who's committing the crime. It doesn't matter the location. But of course, I do not support any of the criminal acts that were committed at the Capitol on January 6th. That's not, it wasn't a good look for America, and it wasn't a good look for democracy. And it's not how we conduct business here in America.
Same question for you, Mr. Sickles. Do you condone, support, or condemn what happened at the Capitol building on January 6th? And please elaborate on your response.
Well, yeah, it's condemnable. I mean, it was a horrible day for America. It's sad that the rest of the world saw that. I think they looking at us in a different light after that. I am sad that there are people out there that may want to do that again. And I'm sad that we had a leader who had autocratic tendencies, who encouraged people to go up there and do that on that day. I mean, our democracy, our small d democracy, is a little bit at threat here, or maybe a lot. I mean, this guy is talking about running for president again and clearing the field of. Sometimes I feel sorry for my Republican friends because there's no room for anybody else other than this former president. So I wish there's something I could do about it. I think learning about the road to tyranny and to autocracy is something that we could do, like read Ann Applebaum's book, read Robert Kagan's column in the Post 2 weeks ago. And it is frightening what is happening in the United States. And luckily there's good people. I think in Northern Virginia, we have a highly educated constituency. I think, I'm talking to thousands of doors. This is what I hear about the doors. Right. I hear about it all the time when I'm at the doors. People worried about our country. So
follow-up, thank you. Follow-up question with regards to policing to you, Mr. Sickles. What legislation do you support to better hold law enforcement accountable in Fairfax County as well as the state of Virginia?
Well, we need to hold everybody accountable for upholding the law. For starters, if you're in carrying a badge, you need to uphold the law. You need to be an example for others. So I think to get the kind of law enforcement we need to recruit the best. We need to pay them the best. There's other careers for people other than law enforcement. Talented people can go to some other profession, and we don't want that. Ideally, we want them working for us. So we are working on our compensation, an 8% raise this year. And then later in the year, we gave them a $5,000 bonus, $2,000 moving expenses. We did a compression relief payment, and we've got a study going on right now on what we should do to make sure that we can retain people. We have vacancies in our state police force right now. So that's what I'm doing about it. And we're trying to make sure that training is consistent across the state, that the sheriff's deputies that provide primary law enforcement in most of the geography of the state have the same training as our police force does. Thank you.
Same question for you, Mr. Hammond. What legislation would you support to better hold law enforcement accountable in Fairfax County as well as the state of Virginia?
Sure. So for the overwhelming majority of our law enforcement, women and men, they are upholding the existing laws. They are conducting themselves in a professional manner. They are putting their lives on a line on a day-to-day basis. And they do feel like nobody from their legislature at the state level or federal level, in many cases the local level, has their back. They put on a gun and badge. We ask them to go out there every single day. They don't know when they're going to get a call that could put their life in danger or not. But what they do fear is, am I going to be the next viral video for me trying to do the right thing, but it was misunderstood or misconstrued, and now I'm a viral video, and now I can't, do my job anymore. So for legislation that's on the books, I'm always willing to review anything that can help law enforcement and communities feel safe and build a bridge and build a relationship. Again, as someone with 8 years of law enforcement experience, actually wearing a gun and a badge, I could be that bridge between our law enforcement and our communities. But one of the things that we must also, if we want to talk about making sure we have staffing levels where they should be, it's not demonizing law enforcement. It's not putting them under a microscope to make them feel like every single thing they do is wrong and that inherently they're against the public. I won't do that. I will stand with the police. I won't accept endorsements from organizations that want to not stand with police. The police need the backing. They don't like bad apples, and they don't like it when people do things that bring harm to them or that's their reputation. So I'll support whatever legislation protects law enforcement in Virginia.
So let's move on to education, which I know is another big topic for us here in the district. Mr. Hammond, for you, what policies would you support to make sure all children have access to a quality early learning experience?
Sure. I think education is so key because education is critical to every aspect of your life, whether it be your career, whether it be you becoming an entrepreneur or a business person. No matter what you do in life, education is the start and the fundamental place for that foundation to be laid. So first and foremost, I am for access to our kids for preschool. Honestly, that's a very popular thing because it allows parents to, decide where they want to send their child for preschool. And we find that early education does help kids down the road. That's a form of school choice. And school choice is something that is popular among parents, especially after what we went through last year, when parents could have had access to the tax dollars they put into a system to then take their kids to a place that was open for in-person learning. So I am for an all of the above approach when it comes to school. I want quality education because our young people are not competing just against their peers locally. They're competing on a state level. They're competing on a national level. They're competing on a worldwide level. So I want to make sure in Virginia, our children are number one at education and academic excellence and ready for the jobs of tomorrow against their peers worldwide.
Same question to you, Mr. Sickles. What policies would you support to make sure all children have access to a quality early learning experience?
Well, I have been working to fund this. I mean, we have a Virginia preschool initiative that's been in place for 20 some years, and working to get every child a grant under that and we're just starting to with 3-year-olds. We did just focus on 4-year-olds, but now it's been divined that we need to start earlier. I talked to our school board members about it. They have a tough job. They get a lump sum of money, and we have space problems. So there's a lot of problems that go along with making this happen. we're improving, we're doing better, and we just got to stay focused on getting the job done. I don't think we need any new policies in this. We need to fund what we need to do, and you can't give away our current tax base and expect to do the things that we want to do in this area, in college tuition, in the standards of learning, in the standards of quality, in mental health. All these things require resources, and we're doing the best we can on a bipartisan basis most of the time to spend your money in the most useful way possible.
That sounds great. I want to kind of stay on the early learning programs and just kind of add one quick question with regards to the expansion of early learning programs such as Head Start in Virginia. Any thoughts on that, Mr. Sickles?
As I said, we need to make sure every Head Start program has quality to it. There needs to be standards. There's some of them out there that have not been as well thought of as others. But there needs to be standard measures of what you're supposed to learn when you're 3 and 3 months, and they have that at certified quality health childcare centers and early learning and pre-Ks. So I think, as I said earlier, we need to, it's a resource issue. We have a workforce problem here too, because we do not pay teachers enough to do this work. We don't have to have the same credentials to teach 3 and 4 year olds as we do to teach a kindergartner or a first grader. Our regulations recognizes that, but we still don't have the workforce quality that we need or the numbers that we need. And it's something that we're working on in our, as I said earlier, of course, is the biggest issue across industries, across organizations, across everything we're trying to do. And we have a severe one in early childhood.
Same to you, Mr. Hammond. Would love your perspective on expansion of early learning programs such as Head Start in Virginia.
Sure. I think anytime we can get our young people, our most precious young people, ahead of the game, critical things such as reading, even speaking, their alphabets, all of those things are critical. What I would like to point the focus to, though, oftentimes we see in those that are, especially our working class, our low income and middle class families, they don't have access to these programs for their young people. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that minority families, low income families, who often are, maybe you have 2 parents that are working shift work and they're trying to balance who's going to watch the child now and who's going to watch the child later. How do we get them into these programs as well? So I think we need to kind of broaden our views of who we target for these programs. But of course, any chance to help our young people get off to a great start, that is critical for them in their learning, I would support.
Thank you. Thank you both. Well, I have one last question. You've been so diligent in getting through so many questions and trying really hard to stick to that 90 seconds, which I really appreciate. So I'm going to go to you, Mr. Hammond, first. And the last question would be, what will be your priorities if elected state delegate for the 43rd district?
First and foremost, just to make sure District 43 knows that they have someone that will listen to them. I think it's important that they know they have someone that they'll have regular access to through regular meetings that are advertised in advance for them to be able to ask me questions. I think making sure we still are dealing with the pandemic. So making sure that we are making sure we're passing policies that don't burden an individual or take a job away from them, but that we do get out of this pandemic, both from the medical standpoint, almost 13,000 Virginians dead is 13,000 too many. Making sure our economy, we have laws that are allowing the economy to grow at the pace it needs to. And then what is the future? What does the future hold for Virginia when it comes to new business opportunities? What does the future hold for Virginia when it comes to new partnerships that we solicit from other states and we try to bring new business in? What does the future hold for Virginia when it comes to our small businesses and making sure they are protected against cyber attacks. Where do we go as a nation on leading on ending human trafficking and sex trafficking in this state and being a model for the rest of the country? Where do we go looking forward in a forward view in Virginia? And it's making sure that everybody in Virginia has a seat at the table, making sure that the people's voice is heard, and admitting when you don't know an answer or you get it wrong. So those would be my priorities. I think getting us through this pandemic, our economy, keeping our communities safe, making sure our small businesses are protected, and just making sure that people have access to their elected officials.
Mr. Sickles, last question, same question. What will be your priorities if reelected to the 43rd District?
Well, I'm going to try to pay teachers more. I'm going to get the standards of quality raised. I'm going to make sure Metro Rail is well funded. I'm going to try to keep college tuition down. I want to work to make sure the integration of Virginia Tech's new innovation campus in Alexandria with the rest of our higher education community goes smoothly. I'm going to work to protect the Chesapeake Bay. We need to continue with our wastewater treatment program. We've made some progress, but we have more to go. We have to set up a marijuana regulatory market. We legalized small amounts, but now we have to set up a regulatory and consumer protection system that set up a system where we have equity in the people who have these businesses. We need to keep working on our early childhood, and we don't have a universal pre-K program. Our only thing we've been doing is trying to get pre-K to at-risk students, the kind of people my opponent was talking about. That's all we do. And so I'm going to keep working all those things. We've got family medical leave is an important subject matter that we're going to delve into. And then there's many things that maybe I'll talk about later when I have more time about healthcare. I spend most of my time with healthcare access and helping in the Medicaid program. That's not just a program for poor people, and but things that we need to do to make it work better and more smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you both so much for just hanging in there with me as we delve into so many different issues, and just your substantive responses have been much appreciated. So this is the last part of our program, and that is the closing statements by the two candidates. We will be reversing the order, and so we'll start with Mr. Hammond, and you have 2 minutes for your closing statement, sir.
Well, again, Gina, thank you for moderating tonight. To the League of Women Voters, thank you so much. And to all of you watching, thank you so much for taking part and taking time out of your evening to listen to both myself and Delegate Sickles. I think tonight you see a clear vision of who you have and what you should want. I am here to serve you. I don't think that Richmond knows it all. I don't think that Richmond has all the answers. And I will be a candidate and a delegate that serves you first and not others first. If you want a candidate that is going to make sure that parents have the final say over their children's education and what is taught, then I'm your candidate. If you're a parent that knows that you felt the pressure of last year with not having the option of school choice, not having more magnet schools or charter schools in our state, let alone our district, then I'm your candidate. If you're someone who feels like the law enforcement isn't appreciated and they're just demonized, then I'm your candidate. If you want a solutions-based candidate, then I hope that you will consider Brenton Hammond for a vote. This message is to Democrats, it's to independents, to Republicans, to non-affiliated. You have a clear choice this election. You deserve someone that you have consistent access to. And you have my word, you will not just see me at election time, you will have regular access to me. So I hope you go to BrentonForDelegate.com, view my issues, view my stances. I've enjoyed speaking to so many of you up and down this district, from up and down to left to right, north to south, east to west. I've met so many of you. And I want you to know you'll always have my ear. I'll always put you first, and I'll always level with you. I won't dismiss things such as a grocery store tax, or if you tell me something that maybe I haven't heard of, I won't be dismissive. I'll always make sure you have my undivided attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now over to you, Mr. Sickles, for your 2-minute closing statement.
Well, I think that I have been a very accessible delegate for all these years. I learn every day from constituents. I fight for Northern Virginia. Richmond, I don't know what that means. It's rhetoric. Richmond knows best. We live and we react to your input and and I've worked well with this very group here in expanding access to voting. And so I don't know what all that rhetoric is. I mean, a lot of red herrings and things, but people know how to reach me. We do COVID. We haven't had as many rallies because we haven't COVID. I've never even met my opponent in person, and I've been out in the community here for way more than my 8 in public service. I served on the library board for 11 years. I served as the president of a charity for 6 years, a $3 million charity. I worked on school bonds. I hope the listeners here will support the school bond that's on the ballot this fall. I've been involved in the community. I can't believe I've never run into him anywhere. So I do value your input. I love working with you. I love this job. We have more to do. We've had an incredible 2 years in the majority. We've made history. We have the first woman speaker in 402 years, the first Jewish speaker in 400. We have the first African-American majority leader ever. We've got lots of firsts. I could keep going. We have a caucus that reflects the diversity of America and Virginia. People look at this state from around the country and say, Virginia is going in the right direction. We're attracting business. So things are not so bad here, and we've handled unlike what you've heard tonight, we've handled the pandemic pretty darn well. I mean, we have probably made some mistakes, and it was hard starting, but we're doing so much better than the rest of the United States. And I hope you'll vote for Mark Sickles again, and we can keep working together to make both a better place.
Thank you. This brings us to the end of our candidates forum. We hope that your concerns and questions have been addressed and answered to your satisfaction. Again, let me thank Mr. Sickles and Mr. Hammond. Thank you so much for participating tonight. We invite our audiences to visit your campaign websites. I also want to give a special thanks to Ava Nash, who's been our timekeeper. She's done a terrific job in keeping us on time. And if you still have questions that we could not ask, or if you have any follow-up questions, please go to the League of Women Voters website at lwv-fairfax.org. That's lwv-fairfax.org, and look for Candidates Forum. You will be able to submit questions there. Many election laws have changed this year, and we invite you to check out all the voter registration and election information on the League's website, as well as vote411.org. That's vote411.org for all the information around voter registration and election information. Thank you all again for joining us this evening. Voting has already begun in Virginia, so please make sure you vote and encourage your family, your friends, and neighbors to do the same. Good night. Thank you.